Thanks for helping me hit 5,000 subscribers. Loki Season 2 just came out, so it's time I finally tackled one of the most surprisingly complex builds I have attempted to date, just for you. This split flap display. It's that iconic look of a display synonymous with airports and train stations, and that one demon clock from Groundhog Day. More recently, you may have seen it in the trailer for the Netflix miniseries Bodies, or more likely, and in what we're basing our build off today, Loki. If you didn't catch my previous Loki Motions graphics build, we created the timeline slider often seen with the split flap display. Here's the link for that one. But in this video, we are going to be making a dynamic split flap display in Adobe After Effects that emulates the look we see in the series. Now, there were a number of different ways to make this work in Adobe After Effects, but you know me, I like to give you a build that results in an unprecedented level of control. So let's highlight what is going to be unique about what we build today. It's going to be a dynamically driven split flap display from a reference text layer, meaning that once built, we can simply set a keyframe for a new word and the display will automatically create the animation between those keyframed words. It's going to give us the option of either being left aligned or center aligned, and we can even keyframe that change between words. We can set a range of characters that we accept, and we can even omit a smaller range within that character range. This lets us either stick to simply A to Z, or add in lowercase or numbers or even special characters. With the right font, you could even use non-English characters such as Hanja or Kanji. We will also be able to quickly change the look of the split flaps through one pre-composition. We will be able to randomize the timing of each character via a slider, plus have an extra seed slider on each split flap if we want to refine it further. We can adjust the positioning for the letters through a letter tracking slider, and through a few little toggles our split flap display can even become completely 3D. This will be a long tutorial, but at the end of it all we will have one powerful split flap display creation. Now, just before we get started, a reminder that this whole tutorial will be available written up on the Media Workbench website, including explanations on all the code and an easy way to copy each expression to your clipboard to then paste into your project. Additionally, I have just launched a store on my website where you can get my own original resources, such as a plugin I use on all my builds to quickly add easing expressions to any keyframed properties. If you don't know what easing is, then I suggest taking a look at this video here. Finally, if you like what I do, then there are two ways to support me. If you need an experienced designer and developer, I have an on-demand subscription service where you can put in as many requests as you like across graphic design, animation, and custom websites, and I will churn them out for you. It's a monthly cost and you can pause it at any time. Secondly, you can support me on Patreon, and by doing so, you get access to the project files of any of these tutorials that I put out, including this one. They're good for CS6 through to the most recent Creative Cloud releases, so if that's what you're after, you can find them there. Okay, enough plugging, let's flip over to Adobe After Effects and build this thing. We're in a new project and we're going to create a new composition, we'll call it letters, and we will make the width 1080, the height 1920, yes that's right, we're going portrait with this thing, the duration 16 seconds, I'm using 25 frames per second, and the background color is black. We'll say OK and create our title action safe so we can see the center point of our composition, and using the text tool we're going to click in the middle to create a new text layer, and I'm going to type W. Now this is a good reference. Whatever we choose font wise is going to be what our split flap display uses, and so I'm going to use Babus New. It's a Google font, you can get it from here. Just see the link on the screen. Now I'm going to scale it up until it's occupying majority of my composition, then holding shift and dragging down, I'm going to position it in the center of my composition. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you know, if you want it to be perfect, you can do so. I'm going to make the fill color white and make sure my alignment for my paragraph is center text. Now we'll toggle it down in the timeline window until I can see the source text property. This is the property which dictates what the actual text is. In here, we're going to hold Alt, click for stopwatch, and type value equals string dot from car code, left bracket time to frames, left bracket time, and close it out with 2 right brackets and a semicolon. You'll see the letter has disappeared, but if you start scrubbing through, you can see all these characters start to flash through. This expression uses the current frame of our composition as the Unicode code point to present a character. Each character has a Unicode code point that is associated with it, and so we have limited our selection to 400 characters because there's only 400 frames within our composition. Now, if you were to use a font that has non-English characters such as Hanja or Kanji, you would need to make your composition big enough to allow for all the associated Unicode codes for all those different characters. Now, scrubbing through, we want to make sure that all the characters fit in nicely into our composition, and if we find ones that are kind of falling out of the bounds, such as the @ symbol, we can split this layer in order to scale that down. So here I have the @ symbol. I'm going to select that layer in the timeline window, hold Control Shift and press D to both split and duplicate, so it keeps the expression we wrote, and then holding Control and tapping on right arrow will move me forward 1 frame, and I'm going to do the same thing, Control Shift D, because I like the the size that the size that it is. So going back to the @ layer where I can see it, I'm going to scale it down. So start scaling, hold Shift to keep those proportions, and then similarly to before, we're going to position it in the middle of the screen, and you can see it feels a lot better like so. Now we'll create another composition. This one's going to contain whatever aesthetic we want for our split flap display. We'll call it flip background. And for now, I just want to draw a rounded rectangle. So we'll go up to the rectangle tool, select rounded rectangle, and we'll just draw one out like so. The good thing about this setup is we can always come back here and change the aesthetics, style it up whatever way we want, but for now this will at least give us a good guide for the rest of our build. So now we're going to create our split flap composition. We'll go up to new composition, we'll call this one split flap, and this is going to have some slightly larger dimensions. So our width is going to be 1800 or 1800, our height is going to be 2200 or 2200, and we're going to change the duration to be 1 minute and 20 seconds. So roughly 5 times the amount of our letters composition. So if you were going to be using non-English characters and you wanted those extra Unicode codes to appear, you would have made your letters composition longer, and so you will need to make this composition, the split flap we're creating, 5 times as big as whatever your letters composition was in terms of duration. We'll hit OK, and we're going to select the 2 compositions we created earlier, drag them in, make sure letters is on top, and then selecting both, hit Control D to duplicate, and we're just going to quickly rename these ones. So the top one will be letters top, the one underneath will be letters bottom, and then we've got the flip background's going to be background top, and then the next one's going to be background bottom, like so. Selecting all of those will also turn them into 3D layers. Make sure the motion blurs off for everything. The background top and background bottom, we want to right click and hit time and freeze frame. And the letters top and the letters bottom, we want to right click and hit time, enable time remapping, and that will let us select all our layers and drag them out for the length of our composition. Now we also want to take our letters top, parent it to our background top, our letters bottom, parent it to our background bottom. Now we're going to mask it out. So our background bottom and letters bottom is going to be the bottom half of our split flap, and the letters top and background top are going to be the top half of our split flap. So we need to use a mask to kind of split them in two to make the actual 2 halves of our split flap. So selecting our background bottom, we'll go to rectangle tool, drag that out, occupying a large portion of the bottom section until we get right up close to our center marker that we have from our title and action safe. Now we're going to select that mask, hit Control C, and go to our letters bottom to add that in, and then we'll do the same thing with the background top. Now if you want an easy way to move around inside your composition window, you can always hold the space bar, that'll give you the hand tool. Now with background top selected, we're going to do the same thing, drag it out and almost touch that center marker like so, and we'll go and copy that and add it to our letters top, and you can see there we've got the 2 halves. If we scrub through, we can see where are we here? That is also applying to the characters that we have there as well. So now we're going to actually make the animation or the motion of our split flap flipping through the different characters. So we're going to select the background bottom layer, and in our effects and presets, go to the color correction, and we'll select brightness and contrast and apply that. You'll see it apply within our effects controls. We can also drag from our effects and presets into our effects controls. So we'll do that with the next one. We'll go to blur and sharpen and select the CC radial blur. We'll toggle the type to straight zoom like so, and we'll select these two effects and hit Control C to apply them to our other three layers like so. So in our timeline window, we can see what we're working with. We can hit E to show our effects, and we can toggle down now to see all the properties that we can set keyframes for. And making sure we have all of them selected, we'll now hold Shift and press F in order to see the mask feather. And we also want to see with the background top and the background bottom, holding Shift and hit R to see the rotation properties. Now zooming in here, we're going to set a bunch of keyframes that we're going to then set values for. So for the letters top and the letters bottom, we're going to set keyframes by clicking on the stopwatch for the mask feather, the brightness, the contrast, and the CC radial blur amount. We'll do the same thing for letters bottom, like so. We'll do the same thing for the background top. We'll also include the X rotation, and for background bottom, we'll do the same as well, like so. Now, scrubbing forward to the second frame, we're going to do the same thing, but instead of clicking on the stopwatch, we're going to click on this empty diamond shape here. And in fact, we can click and hold and then drag down, and that's going to set keyframes for all the properties that had that little diamond available to them, which was all the properties that we had visible that we had just set keyframes for. We'll go to frame 3, we'll do the same thing, and for frame 4, we'll do the same thing again. Now in here, we're going to uncheck the constrain proportions for the mask feather, and then we'll scrub forward to our 0 second mark, and we're going to set some new values here. So on frame 0, we'll go down to our background bottom composition or layer, and we're going to change the X rotation to -60, so that it faces forward slightly. We'll increase the radial blur amount to 50, we'll set the brightness to 50, and for the mask feather, we'll set the second number of it to 400. Selecting the letters bottom, we're going to do a similar thing where we set the CC radial blur amount to 50, we'll set the brightness value to 50, and for the mask feather, that second value becomes 400 as well. Now for the letters top layer, we're going to only set the second value of the mask feather to 100. That's the only change we'll do there, and for the background top, we'll do the same thing. Now scrubbing forward to frame 4, we're going to make the top part start flipping down. So we'll go to the background top layer, we'll go to the X rotation, and we'll set it to 60. We'll drop now the brightness value to -35. We'll set the CC radial blur value to 50, like so. And then for the letters top, we need to do some changes as well. We'll set the CC radial blur amount to 50. We'll set the second value of that mask feather to 400, but for the brightness and contrast, we'll make the brightness value -75, and for the contrast, -50. Now, similar to before, but alternating, the letters bottom mask feather second value will become 100, and for the background bottom, the second value of that mask feather will also become 100. Now, moving forward to frame 5, we want to copy all these keyframes that we have. So we'll select them all for each of the layers, copy, paste, copy, paste, copy, paste, and copy, paste. And then going forward to frame 10, we're going to duplicate just the keyframes that are on frame 0, like so. Perfect. Now for each of these, we want to add in an expression. Fortunately, it's going to be the same expression. So we'll pick any one of those properties that we have keyframes for, and we'll hold Alt and click on the stopwatch, and we'll type loop out duration, left bracket, right bracket, and ending that off with a semicolon. Now, before we close it, we'll select it all with Control A and then copy it. And then we'll hold Alt and click on the stopwatch for each of our other properties. And we're going to just paste that value in. Now, if we don't hold Alt and when we click on the stopwatch, it's going to cancel out the keyframes that we have. So we don't want to do that. And this expression is simply saying, I just want to keep looping through the keyframes that I have on this property as the time goes on, which will save us a lot of copy and pasting in the future. So if we view that now, we scrub through, we can see it's flipping through. But as you can see, our characters aren't lingering. They're just sort of flipping through because it's one character per frame value. We need to change that. And to do that, we're going to go and view our TimeRemap property. So in order to see that, we're going to select our layers and hit U. And that's going to present all the things that have a keyframe on it. And that includes the TimeRemap property. So now we'll go to the letters top layer, holding Alt and click on the stopwatch for the TimeRemap. And we're going to write value at time, left bracket, frames to time, left bracket, math.floor, left bracket, time to frames, left bracket, time, right bracket, divided by 5, and then close that out with 3 right brackets to close off all our brackets. Now, before we close that, we're going to select again, both Control A and then Control C to copy that, and we'll go down to our letters bottom layer and put that as a expression for our TimeRemap property, like so. Now, as we scroll through, we'll see that that is starting to show, and we can see that if we scrub through, it goes 2, 3, 4. That character is lingering throughout the actual animation. And if we were to preview what that animation looks like, you can see it looks like what a split flap actually should be looking like, which is great. Now that we've finished this animation, I'm going to toggle the visibility off for the background top and background bottom because I kind of want to do the Loki look and use just the characters, not the actual border around a split flap. But depending on what look you want to do in aesthetics, we can always go back and change that as well. So now we're going to create the main composition that brings all of this together. So up the top, we'll go composition, new composition, and we'll call this one main comp. And this one's going to be a standard sort of resolution. So 1920 by 1080. We'll make it 30 seconds long. Like so. And now within this, we're going to create our reference layer. So our reference layer is going to contain the source text that is then referred to for our split flaps to know what word it is creating. So we'll go create our text tool and type out media workbench. Now we don't need it this big. Let's scale it all the way down to something that's a little bit more legible so we can see what we're doing. Like so, and we'll offset it just slightly, move it up like so. Now we're going to add a whole heap of expression controls to this layer, and we're going to control the actual dynamic elements of this split flap display. So we'll go to our effects controls for that text layer, and we're going to toggle our effects and presets until we can see expression controls, and we'll drag the slider control over, and we're going to name this first slider control letter tracking. Let's set the value of this slider to 65. Next, we'll drag out another slider control, and we're going to call this max comps. We'll drag out another slider control, and we'll call this starting comp. Drag out another slider control, we'll call this starting frame. Drag out another slider control, we'll call this omit start. Drag out another slider control, we'll call this omit end. Drag out another slider control, we'll call this ending frame. And we'll drag out one last slider control, we'll call this one random start. Finally, we want to grab a checkbox control, drag that out, and we'll call that center text, like so. So you can see we've got all our different effects controls there. Now let's bring in our split flap composition that we just created, like so. Now we'll scale it down quite a bit. I'm going to go to 10%, like so. And I'm going to position it up underneath my reference layer, which it roughly is now. We'll parent it to our reference layer, like so. And on the split flap control, split flap composition, I'm going to create 2 slider controls. I'll create one and call it Interpolation, and create one more and we're going to call it Seed. Now I also want to rename this layer within my timeline. I'm going to hit enter and just type 0. Now I'm going to right click, and in time I'm going to select enable time remapping. And now it's time to write our nice big expressions. Rather than time remapping, let's start with the position property. We'll hit P while we've got our split flap composition that we've renamed 0 selected, and that'll bring up our position property. Now holding Alt and clicking on the stopwatch, we're going to write the following expression. Var number of letters, so var is how we declare a variable, and we're going to say that is equal to this.parent.effect max slider, or max comps, sorry, slider. Now note the formatting of max comp slider. That is going to set, that's how we refer to a slider controller. So you can see it's an effect, it has the name of max comps, and it is a slider. We're going to be doing a lot of those. All right, next line, var xpos for x position equals 2 left brackets, this dot name minus this dot parent dot effect starting comp slider. Note the format again, minus left bracket number of letters, so the variable we just created, divided by 2 left brackets to close out all of that, and then the asterisk key for times, and then we'll say this dot parent dot effect letter tracking slider. So we're referring to a couple of different slider controllers here, and we'll say we'll declare the value, so the value of this property to be the xpos, so the x position that we just created, and then we'll say transform dot position, and in square brackets the number 1, and then close that out with square brackets. So this is creating an array because we have 2 values for this position property. The first value is going to be our x position, which is this big equation here, and the second of it is going to be the actual value of this transform position property. So it's just going to refer to itself for the y position, so we can always adjust things if we need to. Clicking off, you can see nothing really changes. It just kind of zeroes out and is positioned there in the middle. Now we're going to write a expression for our opacity now, and to get to opacity, what letter do you think? Yes, T. Of course, makes sense. Holding Alt, click on the stopwatch, we will write an expression for our opacity property here. We're going to say var starting frame equals this dot parent dot effect left bracket quotation marks starting frame quotation marks, close that out, slider, and then we'll say var ending frame is equal to this dot parent dot effect bracket ending frame slider, always following the same format when we're referring to sliders. And then we'll say var interp equals effect interpolation. No this dot parent on this because this is referring to the slider that is attached to this layer, like so. And then we will say if, so our first conditional of this build, if interp is less than starting frame, and then we're going to do 2 pipe symbols. So it is the one that is on the / as well, or the backslash. The 2 pipe symbols next to each other is how we say or in a conditional. So we're saying or is interp greater than ending frame, and we'll close that out and we'll make our curly brackets. That's where we're going to write what happens. We'll say value equals 0 if either of these apply. Else, value equals 100, like so. So if these conditions are met, either of them, the value of our opacity is 0. Otherwise, our value is 100. So remember, opacity is a percentage. This is saying that if the frame that our interpolation has calculated for is outside of our starting frame and ending frame, then we want our opacity to be 0. So this one to be invisible. Otherwise, keep it at 100. Now we are going to go to the TimeRemap value property of our composition, and we're going to write a quick expression for this one. We're going to say value equals frames to time, and then rather than us typing out interpolation slider blah blah blah, what we can do is pick whip. And what it is it's an easy way to grab slider values. So in this case, we're going to pick whip the interpolation slider, and you can see it auto fills in that content there. Now we're going to close that out with a right bracket and a semicolon, and you can see what this is doing. It is looking at the value of our interpolation slider and considering that as a frame value to then turn into a time value for our time remap, because our time remap property has a time code as the value. So it is a time value, not a frame value. But our interpolation slider is going to be doing all the heavy lifting, calculating a frame value. Now, finally, we're going to write our expression for our interpolation slider. I think in order to make things easier, we'll actually go to our reference layer, and for our effects controls, we're going to toggle the viewer lock, which is going to keep these slider controls and everything, because we're going to refer to them a lot for our interpolation slider for our split flip comp, and it's a lot easier if we can go and pick whip all of these rather than typing out the same slider reference heaps and heaps and heaps of times. So in order to find our slider that we're going to write the code for, we're going to go to effects and interpolation and slider, and you can see it here. And I might make this quite large because this has 100 lines of code, would you believe? So we'll edge our way through it bit by bit and cover what they do as best as we can. So let's get into it. Hold Alt, click on the stopwatch for our interpolation slider, and drag out a nice big space for us to work in. First, we're going to write two functions. So a function is basically a set of code that exists that takes a bunch of inputs and returns some value. It might be a number or it might be an array of numbers. We're going to do both those. So firstly, we're going to create a function, and we're going to call that findCar, and straight away we can declare some parameters that we want to pass into this function. We're going to say key index and then comma parent layer comma current next comma seed, like so. Now closing out that with the right bracket, we're all going to get our curly brackets, and that's where we're going to write what our function does. Starting off, we'll start with seed random, left bracket, key index plus seed plus parent layer dot index, and comma and then true, like so. Next, we'll add a conditional. We'll say if key index equals 0. Now remember, we need two equal signs when we are checking if something is actually equal to something rather than assigning it as a value. So we'll do it like that. And we'll say if key index equals 0, we're going to return square brackets 0 plus random, left brackets 0 comma frames to time comma parent layer dot, and we will pick whip the random start value like so. Now it's going to add this comp.layer. We don't need that because we're using parent layer to refer to it. Now we'll close that out with the two brackets like so, and we'll hit comma, quotation marks, just two. We don't put anything in between. We're going to keep it empty, and then quotation, comma, and then 0, and then a square bracket. So what we are returning here is an array. Our first value of our array is equal to 0 plus a random number between 0 and the number of frames, the time value of the number of frames that random start would equal. So if random start equaled 25 frames, then frames to time would equal 1 second, or 1, because time is considered a decimal number. The second value of our array is just a blank string. We do that by 2 quotation marks. And the third value of our array is 0 as well. Now, if key index doesn't equal 0, we can say else, and we are going to return what it should be in all other cases. So in here, we are going to write var text source is equal to parent layer.text.sourceText. And then we will say if key index is greater than text source.numKeys, key index minus minus, so -1. We can do that by doing two minus symbols. We can add +1 to things as well by doing 2 double pluses. So we'll close out that conditional like so, and we'll say var key string is equal to text source.key left brackets key index right bracket dot value. We'll declare another variable called key letters. Var key letters is equal to key string dot length. So the length of the variable we just assigned, and then var key time is equal to current next equals 1 question mark. This might look a bit weird. This is a inline conditional. So rather than typing out our conditional like so, we are doing the questioning here, and we're going to say what it can be if this value is true, or results in something that's true, or will give what it will equal if this is false. And you can see it saves us time rather than typing out to var key time twice. We can just ask the question and it'll be done here. So we are going to write the what this is going to equal to if current next is equal to 1. And that is text source dot key bracket key index bracket dot time minus random bracket 0 comma frames to time bracket parent layer dot in fact it is rather than mucking around, let's go grab it from here because it's going to be the same thing, frames to time. So we will go here, frames to time like so, and we'll close that one out there. So right now, if current next is equal to 1, then our value is going to be the time value of the key found at key index, and then we're going to minus a random value from it, and we'll copy this whole thing, all of it, and we'll say if current next doesn't equal 1, which is shown by the colon, that symbol just there, then we're going to say it is equal to the same, but instead of it being a minus, we're going to change that to a plus, like so. Now we'll close that out with the semicolon. And then finally, we still need to actually return our array of values. So we'll say return square bracket key time, comma key string, comma key letters, like so. So there is our first function. It is the find keys function, and it's going to give us an array of the time, the string, and the number of letters in our source text property for whatever the index number for a keyframe is. Our second function we're going to write in now, it is called calculate value. So we function calculate value, like so. And this is actually going to give us the frame value of what this comp split flap display should show for the appropriate character that it is representing within the context of everything. It sounds a little bit convoluted, but trust me, it makes sense. The first parameter we're going to say that it's going to add in is actually the key array that we just created. So these will be used in tandem with each other, which is cool. Our next thing, so we're going to say comma centered, comma current next, comma this index, comma parent layer, like so. We'll close that off and we'll give ourselves the curly brackets for where the actual function appears, and we'll do some declarations. We'll say var key val equals -1, Next we'll say var key time is equal to key array, and then square bracket 0 square bracket. So we use square bracket to declare arrays, and we use square brackets to help us get the value of arrays. Next we'll say var key string is equal to key array 1, and then var key letters is equal to key array 2, like so. And then we'll start doing some conditionals that is going to determine what we return. So we'll say if centered.value at time bracket key time is equal to 0, we'll close that conditional off. And we're also going to have an else for that one as well. So we'll write that in. And then for the if statement, if that is true, then we're going to say that if, so we're creating another conditional, if key letters is greater than 0 and 2 ampersands, which means and. So we found the 2 pipe symbols, means or, in a conditional, 2 ampersands means and. So key letters is greater than 0 and this index is less than key letters, we're going to do something. We'll create the wrapping curly brackets for that, and we're going to say that the key val is equal to key string dot character code at this index times 5 plus 2. And so we're changing our key value from -1, and it's now going to equal the character code for the string, for the character found at the index value. But then we're also going to times that by 5 and plus 2, because you got to remember our composition is animating a new character every 5 frames, and the second frame of our little animation sequence is actually when it's finished animating onto a character. So you'll see this times 5 plus 2 come up a couple times throughout the context of our expression here. So that is the declaration for that section. Let's do what happens in our else now. So we're going to say again, if key letters is greater than 0, because sometimes it might not be, and we don't want to do anything if it's not. And we say var modified index is equal to this index minus, we're going to go into a left bracket, math.ceil. Math.ceil ensures that we get the, we round up, and we're going to say the parent layer dot, and we're going to pick whip the max comps. We'll get rid of all this stuff it gives us. So it's parent layer dot effect max comps slider. We'll divide that by 2. We'll close out that bracket, and we'll say minus math.ceil again into that function, key letters divided by 2. We'll close that out with 2 brackets and the semicolon, and we'll do one more conditional in here. We say modified index is less than key letters, and so 2 ampersands, modified index is greater than -1. We are going to say that the key val is equal to key string dot car code at, this time it's modified index, and then we'll do that times 5 plus 2 again. So these both have now declared what key value is in their corresponding situations. Now underneath, we're going to type a new conditional. We're going to say if key val is equal to 162, or, so 2 pipe symbols, key val is equal to -1, or key val is greater than or equal to parent layer dot, and we will pick whip omit start, like so. Get rid of all the stuff. So it's parent layer dot effect omit start slider, and key val is less than or equal to parent layer dot, and we're going to pick whip omit end, like so. We'll close that all out and say what happens in any of these situations. So there's a few situations here that we'll explain, but we're going to say that the key val equals current next equals 1. Here's our inline conditional again, and we're going to say that if current next equals 1, we're going to say that key val is equal to parent layer and pick whip the ending frame. So it'll be parent layer dot effect ending frame minus ending frame slider plus 1, and then we'll do colon for the else case. So if current next doesn't equal 1, and we'll say that is equal to parent layer dot starting frame, like so. Minus 1, like so. And just to close it out of this effect, this function, we need to say return keyval. So pass that out. So we've done all the calculations for this function. So as you can see, we have a number of situations for this conditional to be met if key value is equal to 162, which in the context of our Unicode codes, that is equal to a space. So if you hit your space bar, you're actually saying, I want to add character 162. If our key value is -1, so we haven't set it in any of the situations here, or if our key value is greater than our omit start value and less than our omit end value, in all these situations, we want to either be setting our key value to be our ending frame plus 1 or our starting frame minus 1, and that returns a key value. So we're going to keep these two functions at the bottom of our expression, and we'll give us some space right at the top here. And now we are going to write in the actual code that's going to drive things. The functions are really good in explaining a lot of stuff, but it's here in the crux of things that we're going to write in the remainder of the stuff. And we're going to start it off by doing some declarations, and then from there we'll write in some conditionals that will overarching set up what our value will be. So we're going to start things off by saying our var text source is equal to this.parent.text.source text. That is referring to the property of our reference layer, the source text property of it. That's where all our text keyframes will go. Next we'll say var.thisIndex is equal to this.name minus this.parent dot, and we're going to pick whip the, wrong pick whip, this pick whip, the starting comp value, like so. We'll get rid of the thisComp.layer and just make sure it's this.parent.effect starting comp, like so. Next we'll say var.parent layer is equal to this.parent, and we'll say var centered is equal to parent layer, and then dot, and we will pick whip the center text checkbox here. We'll get rid of the other stuff that we don't need. And finally, we're going to say var final val equals 0. Now, final val is going to be what we declare right at the end of our expression, or rather above the functions, but after the stuff that we're about to write. And it is making sure that we are going to have a value that this interpolation slider will output. So it's avoiding situations where we might not actually calculate anything, and instead is going to ensure that we have a value that is going out for our expression. Next, we are going to write a conditional, and we're going to say if text source dot num keys is greater than 0, we will do something like that. And underneath that, we are going to say value is equal to final val. Now you see the error code's gone away because we are fulfilling our requirement of setting a value for this, because we're not doing anything else yet. In here, we're going to write our expressions to calculate what the frame should be based on a keyframe. And this is just an edge case where if we don't have any keyframes to refer to, we're not trying to do stuff with keyframes and calling on properties and stuff. It's just going to make sure that things don't break. Now, within this conditional is going to be the rest of our programming, and it's going to do a bunch of stuff. Firstly, we're going to spend a bit of time declaring a bunch of variables, and then those variables will declare values for other variables and so on and so forth until we write our final conditionals that'll drive this expression. So starting off within our conditional here, we're going to write var key index is equal to text source dot key, left bracket, text source dot nearest key, bracket time, bracket dot index, bracket dot time, greater than time, question mark. All right, so that whole thing was just asking a question. Now we're going to say math.max, bracket 0, comma, bracket again, text source dot nearest key, bracket time, bracket dot index, -1, 2 brackets to close that one out. So we're saying we're either going to have a value that is the text source nearest key time index -1, or we're going to be 0. So this is going to ensure that we're never in a negative number. Colon, after that we'll write text source dot nearest key, bracket time dot index. Brilliant. Next variable, var current key array is equal to find car. Now we're going to get to use the functions that we wrote. Car is declare index dot this dot parent, comma 0, comma, and we will pick whip, come down here. Oh, it's not open. We'll open it up. Pick whip our seed slider that is on our composition. So we're going to pass the seed value into our find character function, like so. Our next one is var car key time, and we're going to get that from a current key array, which we passed, and it is the 0 index of our array. So square bracket 0 square bracket. Next we'll say var next key array. So doing the same sort of thing, find car bracket key index, comma, this dot parent, comma 1, comma, and we'll pick whip that seed slider again. Remember to close that out, and then we'll underneath that say we'll say next key time is equal to next key array, square bracket 0 square bracket. Now we're going to say our var starting frame is equal to parent layer dot, and we will pick the starting frame from our parent layer, like so. Next we'll say var ending frame is equal to parent layer, and do the same thing. So our ending frame. Next we'll say var omit start is equal to parent layer, and do the same thing, pick whipping the omit start slider. Can see why we locked the effect control before. We're referring a lot to them. Var omit end now is equal to parent layer and dot, and pick whipping the omit end slider value, like so. And then we're going to finally use our second function that we wrote. So we're going to say var car key value. So the current key value is going to be calculate value, left bracket, current key array. So pass the array that we created. We're going to say centered, comma 0, comma this index, comma parent layer, like so. And then var next key val is equal to calculate value, and next key array, comma centered, comma 1, comma this index, comma parent layer, like so. So now we have a whole bunch of variables. Let's do some stuff with them. Our main overarching conditional is going to be if left bracket next key val is less than car key val. Close that out. We'll do a bunch of stuff, and then there is a else for the other scenario for that. And so this is really saying that the frame value of our next keyframe, the one that's coming up, if that is less than the current key value, so what our split comp is currently on, then do some formatting and some calculations. Otherwise do similar formatting and calculations, but there's just some variations in it. Okay, so firstly we're going to write the condition, the code that goes in the if condition. So the one underneath our if statement, it's what happens if this conditional evaluates to being true. And so we're going to say var total dist is equal to left bracket ending frame minus car key val, close that bracket, and then plus, and then open a new bracket. Next key val minus starting frame. Close that bracket, and the semicolon to close that one out. We'll do another conditional which says if next key val is greater than omit end, and then we'll say or, so the two pipes. Car key val is less than omit start. Then we will say that the total dist is equal to total dist minus brackets omit end minus omit start, like so. Now underneath that we're going to declare a new variable, var interp is equal to left bracket total dist greater than 0 and the question mark, so a conditional again in line, and we'll say linear left bracket time comma car key time comma next key time comma 0 comma total dist. If you want to know more about the linear equation, I've got a great video on it. And that is how we declare our interp value. Underneath that, we're going to write another conditional. We're going to say if car key val is greater than omit end, like so. Interp is equal to interp minus bracket omit end minus omit start, like so. Underneath that, we're going to write another conditional. We're going to say if, two left brackets this time, car key val plus interp, close that first bracket off, is greater than ending frame minus a new bracket omit end minus omit start, and close that bracket out, and then we'll close off our conditional like so. Then what happens in our conditional? A bunch of stuff. Actually, not that much stuff, but some stuff. We're going to say var current key is equal to math.round, two left brackets, car key val plus interp, close off that first bracket, and then minus ending frame plus starting frame, like so, and close out that bracket, and then we're going to say final val, so we get to finally declare what our final val will be for the first time. Open a bracket, and then we'll say car key val plus interp, close that bracket, and then greater than or equal to omit start. So we're asking an inline question again, and we'll say math.round, left bracket, current key plus omit end minus omit start. Close that bracket out, and then we'll say colon, current key. So we've got to make sure that when we're using an inline conditional, we're declaring the value in those two instances, rather than our if statements above, where we can even just have an if without an else. Now this one is going to have an else, like so. We'll say the final val is equal to math.round, left bracket, car key val plus interp, and we'll close that one out. And also underneath that, we're going to write one more conditional, if final val is greater than or equal to omit start, final val equals final val plus left parentheses omit and minus omit start plus 1, like so. And that's all for the if statement of that scenario. Now we've got to do the else statement, which is a little bit more elaborate. So firstly, we're going to say if next key time is greater than car key time, and so two ampersands, car key val is not equal to, here's the a new one for us, which is the exclamation mark next to an equals is how we say not equal to next key val. Then we're going to do a bunch of stuff. We'll write the else statement for this now, because it's a bit shorter than what's going to go in the other stuff, and we're just going to say final val is equal to car key val, like so. Now everything else is going to go into this section here. So in our if statement, if all that evaluates to be true, then we're going to ask the next question, which is if car key val is equal to starting frame minus 1, and next key val is equal to ending frame plus 1. Then we want final val to be equal to car key val. Else, so we'll add on the else statement for that conditional, like so. We're going to do a bunch of calculations. So var total dist is equal to next key val minus car key val. We'll then check and see if car key val is a conditional is less than or equal to omit start, and if next key val is greater than or equal to omit end. Within that conditional, we're going to say total distance or total dist is equal to total dist minus in brackets omit end minus omit start, like so. Now underneath that, we're going to go forward. We'll say if total dist is greater than time to frames, left bracket, next key's time, right bracket, minus time to frames, left bracket, car key time, close that one out, and we're going to say the conditional for that one is var interp is equal to total dist greater than 0, and car key time is not equal to next key time, like so. Question mark, then we'll say linear time car key time next key time, comma 0, comma total distance, like so, or the colon 0, so it can be 0 if that doesn't evaluate to being true. Now we'll say else to close out that other conditional, like so. We'll now declare what interp is going to be in another scenario, which is total dist greater than 0. We're going to ask the same question again. Car key time is not equal to next key time, then question mark, and then we'll say if it is true, it is equal to linear left bracket time, comma car key time, comma car key time plus frames to time total distance, so total dist, comma 0, comma total dist. And then we'll close that out with a colon 0 as well. So in the or situations of both of those, the interp value is going to be 0. Now underneath that conditional, we'll write another conditional, which is going to say if car key val is greater than omit end, close it up like that. In that situation, interp is equal to interp minus omit end minus omit start plus 1, like so. Finally, under all of this, we need to actually declare what our final val is going to be. So final val is equal to math.round car key val plus interp is greater than or equal to omit start, question mark, then our value will be math.round car key val plus interp, close it out, plus omit end minus omit start plus 1. Otherwise, so in the colon, we'll say math.round car key val plus interp, like so. And that is the big old piece of code that is going to drive everything for our slider control. It's crazy it's there. If you are unsure about it, you can always, as I said, go onto the website, the MediaBench website, and you'll be able to grab the whole thing. As a reference, here's the whole thing up on screen, but I do encourage you that if you're unsure, you can get the entire expression from the Media Workbench website, where this whole tutorial's written out, like so. Now, you'll notice that in closing that slider control, nothing has happened. Everything's still blank, and that's fine. First, what we want to do is duplicate that split flap composition, like so. you'll see that the number has incremented for the name. We're going to change that to 1, and then we're just going to keep hitting Control D to duplicate that until we have quite a few. Let's say 20 in total, which if we're starting at number 0 means we will go up to number 19 like so. Now I think it's a good time for us to start talking about the slider controls and other controls that we have here pinned on the left in order to know what things are doing. Now the first one is letter tracking. You can see if I toggle here to wireframe, we've got all these different compositions now in a row, and letter tracking is going to influence how spaced they are one from the other. So 65 is a good one for this particular font. Then we'll toggle that back to adaptive resolution. The next slider we have is called max comps. Max comps refers to how many split flap compositions we have. An easy way to know that is by selecting them all and having a look at what our info thing says. It says there's 20 selected. I mean, we did say we wanted 20. And so max comps is going to equal 20. Our starting comp slider control refers to what the first number of this composition is in our sequence. Say we wanted to create an entirely new split flap display, we could duplicate this entire thing by hitting Control D, but notice it starts the first split flap composition, that's the child of that new reference layer, at index number 20, or named as number 20. Rather than going through and renaming all of these one by one, we can just change that starting comp value to 20, and that'll resolve any issues that might arise from that. The next 4 starting frames, omit start, omit end, and ending frame, all refer to the frames within our split flap composition. So they're all going to equal particular frame values in there. The starting frame and the ending frame refer to the first character and the last character that I want to accept as part of my split flap display. So in this case, we'll go to the split flap display, we'll scrub through until we find the character that I first want to include, and the first one I want to include is going to be my letter A here. Now, if I use my Control left arrow and right arrow, I'm going to find the very first frame where it appears, and looking down underneath my timecode, you can see it says 325, and that is the starting frame for our thing. We can type 325 in here. A benefit of having this view locked is we can see it even when we go to other compositions, which is going to make setting these values a lot easier when we're working in this environment at this current time. So next I need to set my ending frame, and to do that I'm going to scrub forward until I find my letter Z or letter Z, and it's going to be the last frame where it is visible. In this case, you can see it is number 454. So my ending frame is going to be 454. Now we'll come back to omit start and omit end, but I think before we do anything else, let's start actually seeing something coming up, because at the moment we're scrubbing through, we're not seeing anything. Instead, let's toggle down our reference layer until we see our source text. So we'll go to the 2-second mark and we will set a keyframe for it. And you'll see suddenly I can now see my text. It's appearing. And what I can do is go to the start of that and preview what that's going to look like. And you'll see that it's starting to actually animate in all those different letters, animate through until it hits that 2-second mark, making the word Media Workbench appear. There we go, and we can see it's flipping through, and those letters all appear. You'll notice that some letters just immediately arrive at the letter that they're meant to be at, and they're not going to go too far. The A, the D, they stop pretty quickly, while others have quite a distance to travel, and so they're flipping until they get to that point, which is a great effect and part of what we want to do. But you'll notice it all kind of starts at the same point. I'm getting a lot of A letters appearing at the same time, and that's where we can toggle things. Our random start value is going to change things, so you can see it starts disappearing, and now things are going to start at different sort of frames. That's where that random value kind of comes in, and it's influencing, basically saying anywhere between our 0 point and our 17 frames in, you can start your animation, and anywhere between our end keyframe and 17 frames before that keyframe, you need to finish. somewhere in there. So that does present a issue where you don't want that random start value to be more than half the length of your animation. So in this case, our animation is 2 seconds long. 1 second has a frame value of 25, so I wouldn't want to go with a random start value higher than 25. It'll just make our animation break. Now, say if I was like, oh, I don't want both these things to appear too quickly, I can always go to one of these and change the seed value and basically change the timing of it as well. So I've got very nuanced control in that regard. Now, this is also appearing on the left-hand side of my slider, or of my split flap display. I want it centered, and that's where that center text checkbox comes in, where it can center the text amongst all my split flap displays, which is great. Now, in order to demonstrate what omit start and omit end does, we're going to have to add in a couple more keyframes. So we'll go to the 3 second mark and we'll add another keyframe for our source text property, and then we'll go to the 5 second mark and we'll go in here and we'll type in 5,000 subscribers. Now I'm making sure I'm using capital letters for my source text because I'm only including the uppercase. It's a little confusing when working with the Babus new font because the lowercase and the uppercase look the same, but that wouldn't be the case with other fonts. So just being aware that uppercase letters and lowercase letters have different Unicode codes, and so for this case, I'm using uppercase letters for all my A to Z characters. You'll notice I've typed in the number 5,000, but I'm not getting a 5,000. And that's because within my split flap composition, I haven't included the range that includes these numbers. So I'm going to have to expand my starting frame to include this 0. So I'll go find where it starts, which is 240, and I'll type 240 as my starting frame. And going back, we can now see that animation coming in. But as I scrub through, you'll notice there's an issue. Now I'm starting to get semicolon symbols, I'm getting less than and greater than symbols, and it doesn't really work with the aesthetic that I'm going for. And that's where the omit start and omit end values can come in. It can actually select a subset amongst our starting frame and ending frame values that we want to omit from being used. In this case, if I scrub through to where my numbers start and find the last frame, the first frame of the first symbol that I don't want to appear. So here's the last frame of a 9. The next one is the first one that I don't want to include. It is frame 290. So I'm going to set my omit start to be 290. And then I will scrub forward to find the A is there, and before that is the @ symbol, and this is the last frame the @ symbol appears on, and so I'm going to set my omit end to be that value, 324, like so. So going in there now, let's test out where we were. We see it goes 7, 8, 9, and our framing will then show it goes straight to A, B, C. So it's now omitting out those characters that we didn't want to include. And the omit start and omit end is a good way to kind of filter through. So if we wanted to include uppercase and lowercase, we could cut out all the characters in between those ones. Or if we wanted to include numbers like this, we can do so. So you can still see that it presents my text media workbench fine. And then as I scrub through, you can see it's going to animate everything through until we get to 5,000 subscribers like so. So that omit start and omit end is doing exactly what it needs to be doing. Finally, let's demonstrate how we can make this a 3D layer. It's actually really easy to do. We can create a new layer, new camera, like so. We'll create it there. It's going to say, oh, well, you need 3D layers. Well, that is not hard for us to do. Going over here, selecting all our split flap compositions that we've parented to our reference layer, we can toggle on the 3D object button and also the collapse transformations. And now when we look, we'll scrub through part way in order for us to see it flipping through different things. And now we can grab our camera tool up the top and pivot around. Now we might hide our reference layer because we don't need to see it during this time, but you can see here that it is showing in 3D space our characters flipping along. And this is even more pronounced if we toggle on a background for our frames. So let's go to our split flap display. Let's turn the background on and toggle over there. And you can see it's flipping up and flipping down. We can see those edges as well. If we toggle our view to be the front view, we can use our letter tracking to give a bit more space for those characters, like so. And then from our camera view, we can see that they're flipping along. And if we scrub through, you can see they're flipping up, they're flipping down, doing some really nice animations like so. And if we want to change the aesthetic, say go in here and we'll duplicate this, instead of it being just the shape layer, we're going to turn on the fill. So we'll go down to rectangle, turn the fill on, and let's give this a ramp as well. So we're going to go to generate, we'll go to ramp, we'll drag it down onto that layer, and we'll make it, say, a gray color to a slightly darker gray color, like so. We can even copy that, bring this other layer above, which was just the stroke, paste it on there and make that a lighter gray, going to a darker gray to give a bit more definition to it. You can see if we toggle on the title action safe, we now have this cool gray grid. We'll go back to our main composition and it has already applied with a really cool look. And the advantage is we can then animate our camera to move around this setup so that we see this cool split flap display animate in, like so. We can pivot it. And we'll leave that to preview. And you can see already it's becoming really easy to work with this display. Simply by adding a new keyframe of some text in our source text, our split flap display will animate between those different texts, and it'll still apply that random look. It'll animate in any blank letters that we appear, it'll make that disappear. Works really well. And if we ever want to animate out of text, we simply just create a keyframe that has a empty text in the source text property. So simply just going in there, deleting what was in there, and it works well. So if we preview that, you can see it's flicking along. We have our animation as we move around. It's a really nice animation going on there. Now we can always go in here, toggle it off, and Bob's your uncle. You can see we've got our animation clicking through, which is great. Very happy with how it's turned out. Now, if you want to know anything more about this, have any issues, or want to read up on some of the ideas that other people have presented and I've answered, you can always go to the Media Workbench website and I'll be able to answer it for you. Otherwise, thanks for sticking with me through this. You can find the whole tutorial on the website as well as the project file available for download, along with others via my Patreon. Until next time, my name is Bench, and thanks for watching.